Hello guys, today's lecture is Functionalism, School of Thought and Psychology. William James uh, was the Harvard University professor, primarily trained in philosophy and medicine. He has a great contribution in Functionalism, School of Thought and Psychology. Psychology in and Philosophy in 1875 offered his first course in psychology. 1875 he has contribution in psychology and also in the philosophy in pragmatism school of thought and philosophy. He worked in the psychology in a function because the structure was a bit controversial. The structuralism school of thought was the controversial. He worked on the functionalism because the structuralism school of thought was the first school of thought in psychology that was controversial, and that was presented by Wundt. The Wundt idea was the mind is present. There are some structures in mind which work and which was based on the human consciousness is based on the structure only. There is no certain functions. If there is a structure, then mind consciousness begin to work. The mind consciousness is ready to work. The total ideas of the structuralism were based on the structure of the mind, but functionalism, the functionalists are on the functionalism is was introduced against the structuralism school of thought of philosophy. Wrote about a stream consciousness emotions. He wrote some books. He wrote some passages. He wrote about the functionalism and stream of consciousness and habit of mind formation body much more. He wrote to the habit formation. He wrote the environment, influences of the environment on the mind of the consciousness, object of the environment on the mind consciousness, habit formation, how the habits are formed, and linked more much with that. The functionalism school of thought emerged with the reaction to the structuralism. This is basically starting. This is a reaction of the structuralism. And functionalism also focused upon the way role and behavior played an important role to be better the environment. This also play a role for the environment and the mind and environment, how the environment influences with environment and their greater influences to the mind. Emphasize the functions of the brain and the human relationship. What are the functions of the brain and human relationship with the environment? Human relationship with the environment introduced, and the function, and emphasize the function and relationship between human brain and environment. How the stream of consciousness flows with the effect of the environmental objects. The school of thought examined with the ways in which the behavior allows people to satisfy their needs. How to we behave with the environment and use the consciousness of the mind functions and with the yes and the things we like, we want to apply those things again and again. The functionalism were especially interested in education and applied psychology. Education and applied psychology, functionalism were interested, and functionalism also. Yes, the functionalism focused upon the role and behavior and the role of the behavior played an important role to be better to the environment. How the role of behavior is important to the environment, behavior and the role, how the human behaves to to its environment, emphasize the functions of the brain and human relationship with their environment. This is same the human brain and the function of the brain with the relationship with the environment. This school of thought examines the way in which the behavior allow the people satisfy with their needs. Okay, yes, the the John Dewey has a great follower and contribution in the functionalism school of thought. And Davy was the follower of the James, famous American educator on the key follower of the functionalism. His was also the contribution in a functionalism, great contribution. The John Davy was a great educationalist and of America. He has a great contribution in the pragmatism school of thought and philosophy, and also in the mm, functionalism school of thought in psychology. The stimulus and JV used the statements. He told that the relationship is not automatic, determine the goals of the behavior. He says stimulus and response are not automatic. Stimulus or response, if there is a stimulus then there is a response. Automatic, the response and stimulus cannot be, you can say if you need a response then you create a stimulus. So that's why there is a great relationship between the stimulus and response according to the Devi. He used to the child education is a great contribution. And first, according to the Devi, the child's according to his view, the child learns actively. Child is active learner in class, in learning situation, learning environment, not to passive learning. Before Devi, it was believed that the child should sit quiet their seats and passively learn. Before Devi, there was a concept of the curriculum centered, teacher centered concept, but Devi preferred to the student centered learning environment in a rote manner. In contrast, there was a rote manner before the Devi. Before the Devi, Devi presented the student centered learning environment, and the learning is the best doing. Learning is doing. If the child starting to doing the things practically by his own hands, minds and consciousness, then he learns practical. He focused on the child's practical activities. Second, one Devi idea that should focus on the whole child, emphasized the child's adaptation. He focused on the child's adaptation of the environment, how child adopt their environment. Child's learning is not only strict to the school or the class boundary, but there is a greater learning from the environment, from the objectives of the environment, situations, problems. There is a great influence, there is a great flow. Environment is a flow of information according to the Devi. Second, that the child should be just narrowly educated, should not be narrowly educated in academic topics, but should learn and think, adopt the world outside of this school. JV said, not to the school. School is not that cannot educate the child fully. Wool, this is not